Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 435 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, both of my kids are absolutely in love with Chick-fil-A. I don't know what it is, but they can't get enough of it. And every time I stop by the restaurant, there's this line of cars wrapped all the way around the building. I'm always greeted by a friendly young person to take my order outside, and they can charge whatever they want for the food. People will pay it, I promise you. And I think our next guest might have some ideas on how this restaurant has been so successful. All right, let's get to it. Professionally speaking, Philip Blackett is passionate about helping entrepreneurs and small business owners grow their dream businesses while utilizing his skill set in sales, marketing, and business development. Philip served as president of Cemetery Services, Inc. That is a seven-figure business he bought based in the greater Boston area. He's also worked at FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, and of course, Chick-fil-A. Philip graduated from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary with a Masters of Divinity degree with a concentration in Great Commission studies. He also earned his MBA from Harvard Business School. In college, Philip graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, who are playing right now, and we wish them all of the best in basketball. Philip is a life member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Let me stress that again, a life member. That is what I'm talking about. IFC and Panhellenic, I'm looking at you. Lifetime member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. When he is not fulfilling his purpose, Philip enjoys reading, watching sports, raising his twin daughters, Sofia and Elizabeth, with his wife, Mayra. Welcome to the show, Philip.
Thank you so much, Michael. Pleased to be here with you.
Man, I tell you what, I met you the other day and I said right away, like you opened your mouth, you said like three words, and I'm like, I know everything about this guy. You got to get on the show as quickly as possible. And here we are. I love it. I love it when it all comes together like that.
Absolutely.
So you decided on UNC Chapel Hill for your undergraduate experience. They are playing basketball right now for their lives in the NCAA tournament. Why did you decide on UNC Chapel Hill?
So UNC is definitely one that, quite honestly, if you don't know my story, UNC actually wasn't in my top 10 when I was a high school senior. It was one where it's a story I haven't told in a long time, but it's one where it's like when I was a high school senior, my first choice was actually Harvard. And so when I was a senior, I applied to Harvard and I got a decision in December saying, yes, come to Harvard. And I was so excited. I literally like screamed in the hallway. My mom thought like I had cut my hand off all of a sudden. She was the shriek, especially an 18-year-old, very high pitched still at that point. Um, and I basically was like, hey, like this is it. I'm going to Harvard. I can just coast senioritis. Come on, let's go. And then about like a month later, or not too far off from there, my college guidance counselor said, hey, there's a scholarship program that we just are now able to nominate students for. And we want to nominate you for it. And I was like, I mean, I don't know if you want to waste your time with me, because I don't know if you heard, I got into Harvard and that's my top choice. I don't know if I would go to this school because the scholarship sounds nice, but I'm going to Harvard. But sure, why not? Go ahead. I don't want to burn the bridge here. Go ahead and nominate me. Mm-hmm. So they nominate me. I get to the semifinalist stage. I get to the finalist stage. I come on campus for the finalist interviews at Chapel Hill. I look at the campus. I was like, oh boy, this is nice. Go through the whole thing. They say, congratulations, Philip. You got this full ride scholarship, tuition, fees, study abroad, laptop, computer back in 2003. That's a lot. Like meals, everything included. All you got to do is just say yes in the dotted line. And I was like, at that point, I was like, you know what, man? I sound foolish still wanting to go to Harvard. And I tell you one thing, UNC put the full court press on me, Michael. They had alumni calling me out of the woodworks saying, "Hey, Philip, congratulations. You really should take the scholarship on. Hey, Philip, congratulations. You really should go to Chapel Hill. I know Harvard's nice, but here's the kicker, Michael. And this might be full circle. They said to me, Philip, you can always go to Harvard for business school, but you're never going to have a college experience like Chapel Hill." I was like, oh, because I was learning at that time. I was like, hey, if you want to go off of prestige, it's better to do that off of graduate school than college. So I was like, all right. And so I told my Mom, I'm going to go to UNC, take the scholarship. My mom started crying, not happy tears. She was like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to see my boy go to Harvard. I said, look, I get it. We've been working on this from the get-go, but I promise you, you let me go to Chapel Hill, I'll do my very best to go to Harvard for business school. And that was when I was 18 years old when I said that.
Wow, and you actually delivered on that promise. You know what? It's an incredible story that you just told, and I'm going through that right now with my daughter. She applied to the Ivy Leagues, and the Ivy Day is the end of March. So we're gonna find out in like a week and a half if she got in, and she's already got a full ride to a big school. And boy, oh boy, we're about to face that exact same situation, and I don't know what to do, but I tell you what, your life worked out really well. So I'm like, I might go and talk to my daughter and say, listen, take that full scholarship and go to Harvard for your grad school, just,
I'm telling you, it
you
makes
know,
sense.
it does. It does. It makes a lot of sense, especially with the higher debt that we're talking about today, because the debt that we were talking about when you and I went to school is different than the debt that we're talking about today. Those
Yep,
are two different numbers, two different ballparks. I mean, we're not even in the same ballpark anymore. So something to think about for sure. But
absolutely.
yeah, thanks for sharing that story. And of course, you joined Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. What made you choose Alpha? You could have joined any organization on campus.
You're right. You're absolutely right. My roommate, he went with Chi Psi.
Hmm.
I had family that were in the National Panhellenic Council.
Hmm.
There were no alphas. So I clearly was like going to be making my own inroads off the beaten path.
Hmm.
Quite honestly, Michael, I think that what did it for me was I really loved what the fraternity stood for as far as like manly deeds, scholarship, love for all mankind, the type of people that were coming out for that fraternity. The people at the local chapter was helpful because like you meet people and you kind of get a sense of how they're like, could I see myself being, brothers with them and that sort. And I think Alpha just stood, it stood a little bit further away from everywhere else I was considering. And so I think for me, it was one of the best decisions I could have made. Not as good as choosing Chapel Hill, but it was a solid decision where I think honestly, like you said, just being a life member, you wouldn't be a life member something you didn't actually have love for. You didn't see like was a really good decision to join. So
Yeah, I like that a lot. Well, good for you for blazing your own path. I'm sure all the Kappas in your family and the Qs and everybody else are probably like, what? What? Like,
yeah. The family reunions, the Qs and the Deltas, man, they just look the other way when I come by. It's okay. It's all right.
they're looking the other way, like, who's this guy, Philip? Oh boy. All right. Well, listen, much respect. I mean, you got to do what's right for you, and it sounds like you found a good fit. So it all worked out. And you've worked for incredible companies. I mean, FedEx, Goldman Sachs, Bank of America, Chick-fil-A. After working for all these different companies, I'm wondering if you've given any thought to what makes all of these companies so successful.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like I was definitely blessed to work with a lot of like blue chip names and brands and that sort, including Chick-fil-A, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm.
Um, and honestly, I think the common element for a lot of that is, really a focus on the people, getting the people right. You can hire anybody. You can hire people based off how intelligent they are. But really trying to find that right mix between like intelligence and that skill set, those hard skills, and also those soft skills where people have good communication skills with each other, relationship building skills. You got a culture that you're building that people feel more connected to than the actual product. And you feel like you are like connected in a family. sort of thing. Like I've been blessed to work with a number of different jobs, a number of different bosses, and I can tell you the ones that usually stand out clear for me is like that was a great experience were ones who you felt like you were welcome as part of their family. You were willing to, basically stand up for them and be an advocate for that company. Um, and you really like gravitated to what they stood for, what the mission was, what the values were. And it was beyond just, hey, we're just trying to make a buck here,
Mhm.
right? This is one where it's just like, look, there's something here that we can have a significant impact for people beyond just ourselves. And I think that was something that for me, I really gravitated towards. And I thought that this is the type of stuff that keeps these companies around and keeps them successful.
I love that. And I also love that you mentioned the soft skills. I think, that's where fraternity and sorority comes into play. It's developing all those soft skills that you can't get just going to classes at UNC Chapel Hill. There's got to be something else that kind of develops those other areas that you're talking about. I also wanted to talk to you about your book. It's called Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. I got to tell you a story. I was speaking out in New York one time, and this was a few years ago. A sorority member came up to me after the program, and she was talking to me about the fact that she was not allowed to talk about her Republican views in a majority Democrat chapter because her sisters, her sorority sisters, felt that it would reduce the number of potential new members that would join their sorority on this campus in New York. So, how can we navigate these really difficult conversations that we're going to be having with our family, with our friends, with others in the Greek community, maybe other alphas, and then disagree with someone's views, but still respect them and still love them as a human being?
I mean, I would love to talk to you, that sorority sister, because I went through something similar. Like
Mhm.
imagine like being around your brothers and they're like, who are you thinking about voting for? Who are you thinking about voting for? And you're sharing like, you know what? I don't know if y'all know this about me, but I actually am more of a conservative.
Mhm.
And the brothers was like, ah,
Right, right,
like
same
left the
thing.
room, that sort of thing. I
Yeah.
had to bring them back in the sort. And definitely a lot of questions that came out of that too. Like, how could you? Why would you? Are you insane? Is your mind right? What's going on, Philip? You've been drinking something? What's going on?
Mhm.
And I would say this, Michael. I think that I would venture to say that you don't come across anybody in your family, Michael, that you agree with on everything,
That's true. Definitely.
right? But you still love them.
Yes.
You still care for them. You still take them to school. You still consider where they're going to go for college. You might see where I'm going with this, right? Right? You still love them.
Sure.
And so I think that that's kind of the thing too, that I think we've lost the rules of engagement where when I was growing up, you could have people actually have a real debate, not what you see on social media, not where you see people trying to silence somebody and protest where they can't even get a word in. It's like, actually, you say your piece, and then I'm going to say my piece. We're going to rebut. We're going to have closing arguments. And at the end of the day, we'll shake hands. And I've actually seen people, probably don't see it now, but I've actually seen people that are going back and forth. And at the end of the day, they'll shake hands and they say, you know what? Good job. I appreciate the challenge in that one. Um, See you Saturday for your son's soccer game. Oh yeah. I'll see you there. And send my regards to your wife. Hope she got the flowers I got. Hope she's feeling better, right?
Mm.
Which nowadays you would think like that's like sleeping with the enemy. Like you would never. I would never. Why? Because they think differently than you. Why? Because they believe differently than you. That's why you're just going to cut off all communication with that person.
Mhm.
Why? Because they vote differently from you. You're just going to exclude any consideration, be a part of a sorority, because God forbid there are people that actually think beyond what others are having the stereotypes of how they should be thinking. You see, the issue is, and we come across this in the MPHC as well, right? All Black people don't think us the same. All fraternity frat bros don't think the same. All sorority sisters don't think the same. In fact, when you embrace diversity beyond skin color, beyond what you see on the outside, that's where you get the richer sense of what diversity really is about. And that's dealing with diversity of thought. So I would say for the sorority sisters, that honestly, that might be the sorority's loss, because what you're doing there is you're telling them that your values are, yes, what you put on the bulletin or on the website and that sort of thing, but there's also some hidden values that say, hey, if you align more on this level when it comes to a political persuasion, we might just go ahead and just prejudicially exclude you. Don't even worry about applying. Don't even worry about putting your name in there, because you're not welcome to have a different viewpoint among sisters that you love. Now tell me how ridiculous that sounds. You're in a family that love each other, but because you think differently, now all of a sudden they don't love you. This reminds me of something where, Michael, the genesis of the book came from my mother. And she told me when I was growing up, and this is basically the core theme of this: just because I disagree with you, Philip, that does not mean that I don't love you. So if you think about it like that, Michael, you can have people that disagree with one another, but hopefully you're still loving to the point where you can respect one's views and their thoughts and still appreciate, respect, and love them as a part of your family.
Yeah, 100%, and listen, I got two kids. One's in college, one's about to go to college. They are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to politics, and I have to love them both equally. There's been some fierce debates, and I welcome those debates. When you look at, let's talk about fraternity and sorority. Why did fraternities and sororities even start in the late 1800s, early 1900s? It was so they can debate off campus. It was a literary society. They wanted to debate and have these discussions about topical issues of the day. And a lot of times, a lot of these universities weren't talking about that kind of stuff. And so, that's what they did. It all went underground. And so
Mm-hmm.
why can't we have these debates? I think that's what makes fraternity and sorority great, is that we as brothers can go into a room and we can talk about an issue. We can come about it from different sides. And then by the end of the meeting, we're going to come together and we're going to make some decision together. And it's going to be a unified decision. And I think for new members to see that process, that's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing too about it, Michael, that's good preparation for life after college,
Yeah.
because you're going to likely be in a work environment where they're going to ask you for your viewpoint. They're going to ask your teammates' viewpoint on it. You might not agree, but you still got to come to a decision at the end of the day of what your team's going to do. And if you got your way, or if you didn't get your way, guess what? You don't just flat out quit the team because you didn't get your way on the decision. No, you roll with it and say, you know what? It wasn't what I decided to do, not my cup of tea, but you know what? I'm gonna support my team.
Right.
And that's maturity that we need more in our society today, especially young people, to say, hey, you know what? We had time to talk about it, but at the end of the day, make a decision, we move forward. I still got your back.
Yeah. And, to go one step further, I'll say also this, and that in fraternity, a lot of times we have this motion, 60% says yes, 40% says no. We just go with the 60% because that's the majority and we just keep on moving. What about the 40% that said no? We still need them as members in our organization. And many times they just want to feel heard. So
Yes.
that's really the key here, is that instead of just always going with the majority, sometimes you have to develop consensus. And
Mm-hmm.
consensus takes a little bit more time. I get it. Okay. It does take a little bit more time, but that will help. And many times they just want to be heard. They might still go along with the group that maybe they don't agree with, but they just want to be heard. They just want to know that their brothers and sisters actually heard their viewpoint. And that's all they really care about.
Exactly.
you know and
Yeah.
I also want to take this one step further, because there are famous comedians out there and there are speakers out there that absolutely refuse to speak on college campuses because they're afraid that if you disagree with one small part of their program, I'm talking about 30 seconds of a 60-minute talk, that students or administrators are going to discount the entire program. So how do we train ourselves to be open to new ideas, new thoughts, and just view it as an opportunity to review our own thoughts in our head, or just grow as people and learn somebody else's viewpoint?
Here's the thing, Michael. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
When you were born into this world from your mother,
Mhm.
did you have all the thoughts that you have now?
Clearly not.
So
No.
how did you get those thoughts that you have now after being born?
I mean, listening to teachers, parents, professors, religion, trying to understand the world better and then come to my own ideas on what I think is right.
And did you come across some opinions and thoughts that you thought about and you said, yes, that's what I want? And some thoughts you said, nope, that's not what I want.
Clearly, yes, absolutely.
So that's the type of environment we need back in our colleges,
Yeah.
because colleges are seen as a great building block of a young man or young woman's like development. And you're going to get hit with different thoughts, ideologies, philosophies, religions, all that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
But if you take the time to say, you know what, you can listen to this, but we're going to make sure you don't listen to this. This speaker can come, but that speaker can't come, and we'll make sure of it. I saw an example earlier this week.
Mhm.
A speaker came on a campus near where I used to grow up, and one organization prided itself on buying tickets to leave those seats empty.
Right.
And when that didn't work, they then staged a resistance so that the speaker couldn't even get words out to answer people's questions. And he later had to walk off the stage prematurely, basically taking away the whole experience for the people who genuinely wanted to watch and hear the speaker, all because one group of people said, we don't like this person so much that we want to completely interrupt and silence this guy because we think that what we say is better.
Right.
That didn't exist when I was in Chapel Hill. And sadly, that is the case with a lot of campuses. And my thought is this, Michael, what you're basically doing in that sort of environment is you're preventing people from having the type of experiences that you had by giving people the ability to hear other people's views, think for yourself, don't be peer pressured to think a certain way, don't feel intimidated if you think something differently, that you can still be loved and appreciated for having a minority perspective, right? And be able to just as an adult be able to say, okay, let me look at the facts here. Let me look at both sides. God forbid. My mom was very, very persistent. I mean, when I was thinking one line of thinking, she said, you know what, Philip? You need to be open to other people's points of view because one, like you said, Michael, by excluding yourself from what other people say, they don't feel heard. If they don't feel heard, they won't want to work with you.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you this, I've worked with a number of different companies, and I can assure you, all the people I work with, they all didn't think the same way. And if I took the vantage point of because you don't think the way I think, I'm not going to work with you, guess what? I'll be unemployed the next day. Okay. So what we have to do is we have to re-engage, have a better rules of engagement with people to say, listen, college is going to be something we're going to provide different viewpoints, and we're going to protect those people to share their own freedom of speech. Say what's on your mind, protect you to be able to share that unencumbered. No cancellation, no silencing, no protesting where you're barring people from actually attending the actual meeting. And just say, look, if you're that confident in what you believe, here's my thought. If you're that confident, Michael, let them speak. And then you can speak afterwards. What if Carolina was playing basketball and they say, you know what? The people we're playing against, we shouldn't have to play them. We shouldn't have to play. Like, give us the trophy. No, you have them play basketball. They compete. They have a certain way of playing. The other team has a certain way of playing. Whoever wins, good game. We got to put that back in our public discourse. We got to put that back in our debates, and we got to have that on our campuses so people can think freely and express themselves without fearing being canceled or alienated.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. We need to get back to that as quickly as possible. It's so hard for me to get my arms around how we can get there. But yes, this needs to happen as much as possible. And you know what? It's not a bad thing to change our mind too. Sometimes you change your mind, you get more information, and you make a different decision. It's
I
happened to every
agree.
single one of us. That's okay, right? That's totally okay. And if you still disagree at the end of that speaker, that's okay too. It just solidified your opinion on that issue, and now you feel more confident when that issue comes up again, that you understand all sides of it and you still feel confident. Okay, that's cool too. You know what I mean? Like nobody is saying this is how you have to believe.
Right.
Nobody's saying that. We're just saying open up your mind to another way of thinking. You may agree or not agree, and that's okay, but we just want to give you another viewpoint.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm with you 100%. I want to talk to you about business as well because, not everything goes perfectly, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you have some blue chip companies that you've worked for, and that's amazing. But you also learned some lessons in terms of your first failed business. What happened there?
Yeah, it was one where I basically acquired a cemetery services business. They focused just on managing and operating a number of cemeteries in the Northeast region.
Mhm.
And that was right before COVID. And when I bought the business, I did not know COVID was around the corner. So I had to quickly, once 2020 came around, make some adjustments to help keep the business going. And we went back and forth, kind of like a knockout fight for like 12 rounds. And in this case, another 3 years. And unfortunately, we got to a point where we had taken such a beating from what was happening that we had to shut down. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from that was um, you learn much more from your failures than you do from your successes.
Yeah.
But we live in a society that doesn't feel comfortable sharing that because I shared like 10 lessons and I know I don't have enough time to go through all 10, but I will say this. Part of the thing is that there's so much peer pressure to look your best with the right filters on Instagram. And if you have to repost something because you didn't get enough likes on the first minute, you take it down. There's this posturing, like we're perpetuating imposter syndrome in the process. And sometimes it's hard to expose where you went wrong. But once again, just like we talked about silencing other people's viewpoints and that sort, you're also silencing an opportunity for you to learn by
Mhm.
taking that step, by being vulnerable, by being able to take a chance that other people wouldn't take. And you learn from the process because I can assure you, you often learn more from your failure to prepare you for the next time around where you become more successful,
Mhm.
right? No one's perfect on the free throw line, Michael, but guess what? To be Steph Curry and make 90% of your free throws, that means you have to go through a lot of free throws, getting the right technique, which means you make a lot of free throws, but you also have to miss a number of free throws to get the right shot for you. But if you never take the opportunity to try, you'll never know how far you can go.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really, really important. You're right. I mean, if you want to be a good speaker, you got to be vulnerable there up on stage. And you do have to share the times when things didn't go right. And that's where the audience is going to hook into you because they've also tried something and they failed. But you being open and honest about that, I think you're right. That's where you learn. That's where the audience learns as well. And sometimes people connect with you on that level, on where you fail. Sometimes for me also, I pride myself on growing companies and being successful all the time. But, sometimes, my wife doesn't want to hear about how everything is perfect. Talk to me about where, you failed and where you want to improve. And that's where we share some really great, deep conversations. But if I'm putting on this perfect facade all the time, it's not going to work. I'm just telling you, it's not going to work.
It makes me think of one of my favorite celebrity entrepreneurs, Sarah Blakely, the founder of
Mhm.
Spanx. I'm not sure if you
Sure.
heard the story where when she was growing up, supposedly her father would ask her, "How did you fail today?"
Mm.
Which is an odd question to ask your kid, especially when you want to make sure everything's okay and that they got the thumbs up and then everyone's like smiles and sunshines and rainbows.
Yeah.
But what she talked about was that daily questioning, knowing I was expected to share with my dad how I failed, it prompted her to take action. It prompted her to take leaps of faith. It prompted her to stretch herself outside of her comfort zone. And I honestly believe that part of why she's so successful now is because of her putting herself out there when other people wouldn't want to do it.
Mhm.
Lastly, it also makes me think, going back to Carolina, one of my favorite quotes is dealing with Michael Jordan.
Oh
You
yeah.
might have heard that quote. I won't be able to get it verbatim, but it was basically, to paraphrase, he was talking about all the different shots he had to take when he was trusted with the game winning shot.
Yeah.
and all the times he missed
Yeah.
and he kept shooting. And it was because of him always taking those shots. That's what made him successful.
100%. 100%. I really like that. The other thing that you talk about too is this core four of dream business growth. What do you mean by that?
So when you're an entrepreneur or small business owner, you think about usually the first two.
Mhm.
But I also would argue when you're taking a more long-term perspective of where your business should go over time, you should also add two other components of growth here. So the core four is basically grow sales, grow profits, which makes sense. That's your top line, your bottom line of any profit and loss statement for a business. That's dealing with the short term, the quarter, the year.
Mhm.
What I would add to that is more the long range ones. So on a top level or top line beyond a year is grow via mergers and acquisitions. So really the short end of that is basically saying, hey, are there other ways I can find other businesses to either collaborate with or even buy and acquire and merge with that could be able to help me reach certain populations or demographics or have certain products or services I couldn't do before? And you can do that regardless of your business size. This is not just for the big publicly traded companies I might have worked with before, right?
Mhm.
And then the last one is the bottom line for a long-term perspective, and that's to grow your exit value. And what that means is basically, listen, um, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be here in eternity. Like, there's going to be a point in time where I'm going to leave the earth, right?
Sure.
So at any point in time, we all will have an exit.
Mhm.
And so the question will be when then that time comes, whether it's, hey, I've had enough of this. I want to move on to something else. I want to retire, or it's time to meet your maker. You should have an exit strategy for your business. And hopefully the exit value is how much value your business is that you have grown over time, which can include your profit. That when it's time for you to exit, then you can say, like, I've truly maximized or optimized my business to be of most value, not just from a money perspective, but maybe also from an impact standpoint as well, as far as whose lives, the number of lives, and to what degree have you positively impacted them
Mhm.
by you being in business? Kind of like Chick-fil-A, right? Part of their mission statement to have a positive influence on those they impact while glorifying God in the process for all that He's entrusted us with.
Yeah. Well, now I can see why Chick-fil-A is such a good fit for you. And you know what? As an entrepreneur, you're absolutely right. I'm always focused on the first two, which is, sales, profitability. I have an accounting major, so it's like that's part of my makeup, right? But I don't spend enough time thinking about, mergers, acquisitions, working together with my competitors in some way. And then that exit strategy, I mean, I'd love to just continue doing what I'm doing right now, speaking for the rest of my life until I meet my maker. Like, there is no exit. It's just keep doing this, until I can't anymore. And so, that becomes a valid question to start asking as you get older, as maybe you can't travel as much as you used to, what does that look like? And what is that exit? And I haven't spent enough time thinking about that yet. And I
Maybe this is a good reminder.
it's a good reminder for sure, for sure. Well, listen, this has been a lot of fun, and I know you certainly want to watch North Carolina as well. Now, before we go, I have to tell you, I love the Boston area. Okay. My daughter is very seriously considering Harvard. We're going to wait until the end of this month to figure out what that looks like. She's also looking at BU too. She really likes that school. She had a really good time there. So the next time I hit Boston, which sounds like it's going to be pretty soon, where should I go for a great meal?
So I thought about this as far as like of all the places I've been to in Boston with my wife,
Mhm.
what's probably one that I always will remember.
Yeah.
And I think it's the type of same experience you can have with your daughter as well.
Okay.
I would say go to Legal Seafoods in the Seaport.
Okay.
And it's primarily because I'm a big seafood fan,
Yeah.
but the view of the Boston Seaport is
Stunning.
awe-inspiring.
Yeah.
You can get that type of view where you can look out there, especially when the sunset hits just right,
Yeah.
right? Um, I think to me, the ambiance and the atmosphere is just as important as the food.
Mhm.
And if you can hit all three, that's going to be a memory that I believe your daughter will remember for the rest of her life with you.
I agree with you completely. I know exactly where you're talking about, and you're right. Those views. I think I went to another restaurant. There's like a whole bunch of restaurants right there. And I looked at those views. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, this is absolutely stunning. Now, the weather is not as warm as I would like year round. You got to understand, I'm living in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm used to some warmer climates. But yes, the views you can't beat where you're talking about. And so I definitely will go and check that out within the next probably month as my daughter decides where she wants to go to school. So, all right. So, if our student listeners, if they want to buy your books or they want to connect with you as a speaker on their college campus, because you clearly have a lot to offer, where should they go in order to connect with you and get your books?
Yeah. So to, basically reach out for books, Amazon.com, just look up Philip Blackett. I have all my books there. You can also go to my website, philipblackett.com, and be able to connect with me on social media, read some of my blog posts, check out my books from there as well, or see how it can be a benefit to your college campus when it comes to speaking, especially when it comes to disagree without disrespect, which, as our conversation has alluded to, can be very helpful, not just for us adults, but definitely for college students as they continue their growth and development.
I'm with you, Philip. I think that's really the big one right there. It's figuring out how we can work together on college campuses across this political spectrum. I mean, we didn't even get into what's going on in the Middle East right now. I mean, there's so much there. And then, of course, with the elections that are going to be coming up later this year in 2024. Oh my God, we need you, Philip, man. We need you bad because
And that's the thing, Michael, real quickly, is like, a lot of people think this is just a political book. And I would argue this is something that is a life skill.
yeah.
You are communicating what's important to you, and you're allowing yourself to learn from someone else's viewpoint. And whether you agree or disagree, you can still have a respectful dialogue, and you can still have a healthy relationship with that person, whether in the home, as far as family, at work, as far as colleagues, at your place of worship, in the political arena, any place you embark on working with other human beings.
Mhm.
This is a skill that you're going to need, especially how global our world is today.
Totally agree. Go and check out his book. It's called Disagree Without Disrespect: How to Respectfully Debate with Those Who Think, Believe, and Vote Differently from You. Go and check out his website. It's philipblackett.com. It's spelled PHILIPBLACKETT.com. Go and check that out. I'm telling you, Philip is the real deal. Philip, thank you so much for spending time with us today. This interview was exactly what I thought it was going to be, which is absolutely amazing. So thank you.
I'm so thankful to hear that, Michael. I appreciate that, and go Heels.
Go Heels. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this conversation with Philip, I want you to like it and I want you to share it on social media so that way other students on your campus can hear Philip's words and start to understand how to disagree without disrespect. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. See you next time.